Princess Rosette. Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who were blessed with 2 beautiful sons and 1 little daughter named Rosette. Princess Rosette was renowned for her exquisite golden hair, so enchanting that everyone who saw her was immediately filled with love. When the time came for her christening, the queen extended invitations to fairies from all corners of the world, hosting a truly splendid banquet in their honor. As the fairies prepared to depart, the queen, adhering to their usual custom, asked them to foretell Rosette's future. The fairies, however, delivered a somber prophecy. They feared Rosette might become the cause of great misfortunes for her brothers, possibly even leading to their deaths. They expressed deep sorrow at having nothing better to tell the royal couple. The king and queen were profoundly saddened by this dire prediction. For several days, the king consulted with his ministers and wise men from various parts of his kingdom, desperately seeking a solution. Meanwhile, the queen wept continuously by baby Rosette's cradle. In their despair, the king shared with the queen what he believed to be their last hope. In a great forest near their castle, an old hermit resided, to whom people from far and near traveled to seek advice. Believing he might know how to prevent the misfortunes the fairies foretold, the royal couple decided to consult him. They set out very early the next morning on their horses, with the king's men riding behind them. Upon reaching the forest, they dismounted, for the trees grew so thickly that horses could not pass. They continued on foot to the hollow tree where the hermit lived. The hermit immediately recognized them and welcomed them, asking what they sought. The queen recounted the fairy's prophecy concerning Rosette and implored his advice. The hermit's counsel was stark. She must shut the princess up in a tower and never let her come out of it again. The queen thanked and rewarded him, and they hastened back to the castle. Following the hermit's advice, Princess Rosette was kept in a great tower. To ensure she would not be bored, the king, the queen, and her 2 brothers, the eldest known as the Great Prince and the second as the Little Prince, visited her every day. Her brothers loved their sister dearly. Soon after, tragedy struck as both the king and the queen fell ill and died on the very same day. All the bells in the kingdom tolled, and everyone mourned, especially Rosette. With the kingdom now needing a ruler, the dukes and councillors placed the great prince upon a golden throne and crowned him with a diamond crown, proclaiming, "Long live the king." Now that they were the masters of the kingdom, the new king and the prince decided to release their sister from the dull tower she was so tired of. The king welcomed her, promising that he would soon arrange a grand marriage for her. When Rosette emerged from the tower and saw the beautiful garden, full of fruits and flowers, with green grass and sparkling fountains, she was utterly astonished. She exclaimed that it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Observing her amusement, her brother asked what captivated her. Rosette pointed out a peacock, declaring it a beautiful creature. In that moment, she proclaimed, "I will never marry anyone but the king of the peacocks." Her little brother asked where they would find such a king, but Rosette steadfastly insisted she would marry no one else. The king and the prince then pondered how they might find this elusive king of the peacocks. They commissioned a portrait of the princess, which looked very much like her. The king announced to Rosette that since she would marry no one but the king of the peacocks, they would venture out into the wild world to search for him. In their absence, Rosette was to take great care of the kingdom. Rosette thanked them for undertaking such trouble on her behalf and promised to diligently care for the kingdom. The king and the prince set out from the castle, traveling further than anyone had ever been before. They tirelessly asked everyone they met if they knew the king of the peacocks, but the answer was always no. At last, they came upon a road where peacocks were perched in every tree, their cries audible from a long way off. This road led them to a city where they found men and women dressed entirely in peacock's feathers. Soon, they saw the king himself, driving about in a beautiful little golden carriage that glittered with diamonds and was drawn at full speed by 12 peacocks. The king and the prince were delighted to finally see the king of the peacocks. The king of the peacocks, observing them, remarked that they looked like strangers and asked who they were. Rosette's brother replied that he was a king like himself, and his companion was a prince, presenting the portrait of their sister, Princess Rosette. They explained they had come from very far away to ask if he would like to marry her. The king of the peacocks inquired if her heart was as golden and beautiful as her hair. Her brothers enthusiastically assured him that she was 100 times as good as that. Satisfied, the king of the peacocks agreed, stating, "Very well, I will marry her with all my heart and keep her very happy." He promised she would have whatever she liked and that he would love her dearly. However, he issued a stern warning: if her heart was not as golden and beautiful as her hair, he would punish them. Rosette's brothers readily agreed to this condition. The king of the peacocks then directed them to his kingdom's guest chambers to stay until the princess arrived. Soon, Rosette received a letter from her brothers, informing her that the king of the peacocks had been found and was waiting to marry her. She was instructed to pack all her treasures as quickly as possible and come to them. Rosette, now aware that her suitor had been found, decided to entrust her brother's kingdom to the care of the wisest old man of the city. She instructed him to take charge of everything and ensure the people remained happy and content until the king returned. Rosette then set out, taking with Too glad to marry her. The thought of receiving 100 gold coins swayed the boatman, and he agreed to the wicked nurse's proposition. The wicked nurse, the boatman, and her daughter then picked up the princess, along with her feather bed and frisk, and threw them into the water. Luckily, Princess Rosette's bed was entirely stuffed with phoenix feathers, which are very rare and possess the unique property of always floating upon water. So, Rosette continued floating about as if she had been in a boat. Frisk, who suddenly woke, began to bark loudly and incessantly, waking Rosette and attracting all the fish, who came swimming up around the princess's bed, poking at it with their great heads. Rosette realized they had been tricked. By this time, the wicked nurse and the boatman were quite a long way off. Rosette urged Frisk to make haste to land, believing they must be quite near the city of the king of the peacocks. Meanwhile, the nurse's daughter put on Rosette's prettiest frock and adorned herself from head to foot with diamonds. The boat soon reached the shore of the kingdom of the king of peacocks. When she stepped from the boat, the escort sent by the king of the peacocks caught sight of her and were very surprised. The nurse's daughter immediately behaved rudely, demanding food and threatening to have all their heads cut off if she wasn't served. The escorts noted with dismay that not only did she not have golden hair, but she was also wicked, certainly not worth bringing from the other end of the world for their poor king. The procession was long and advanced slowly, with the nurse's daughter sitting in her carriage trying to look like a queen, giving slaps and pinches to everyone she could reach. Meanwhile, Rosette and Frisk, with the help of the fish, also reached the shore of the Kingdom of Peacocks. Rosette thanked her fish friends, promising she would never forget their help and would tell their tales to her friends and family. She then urged Frisk to lead the way, and they hurried on. The procession with the false queen reached the palace, where the King of the Peacocks waited with Rosette's brothers to welcome the princess. The false queen stepped out of the moment. Rosette ran towards the King of the Peacocks, with Frisk close behind her. She knelt down in front of the king and declared, "O King of the Peacocks, I am the real Princess Rosette, and she there, dressed as me, is my nurse's daughter." The King of the Peacocks was shocked. Rosette then explained everything that had transpired. Upon hearing the truth, the King of the Peacocks commanded his guards to seize the nurse and her daughter, bind them with ropes, and throw them into the sea. The guards immediately began to carry out the order, seizing the wicked nurse and her daughter. As they were led away, Rosette turned towards the King of the Peacocks and pleaded, "O King of the Peacocks, please don't harm them. Please forgive them, for their greed got the better of them. If you forgive them, they will surely learn from their mistake and never wish harm upon anyone." The King of the Peacocks was greatly impressed by Rosette's gesture of kindness towards the wicked nurse and her daughter, despite their attempts to harm her. He smiled, declaring, "Not only is your hair golden, your heart is as golden as it can ever be. I am very impressed." The King of the Peacocks, swayed by Rosette's compassion, forgave the wicked nurse and her daughter. The nurse, in turn, restored to Rosette all her dresses, jewels, and the bushel of gold pieces. The King of the Peacocks also made ample amends to the king and prince for the unjust way in which they had been treated. The wedding was held at once, and they all lived happily ever after, even Frisk, who enjoyed the greatest luxuries and grandest treats. Analysis. The story of Princess Rosette is a classic fairy tale that explores several profound themes, primarily the triumph of inner virtue over superficial appearance and the redemptive power of forgiveness. From the very beginning, Princess Rosette is identified by her beautiful golden hair, a physical attribute that initially defines her appeal and is mentioned as a key expectation by the King of the Peacocks. However, the narrative expertly shifts this emphasis from external beauty to internal character. The King of the Peacocks explicitly states that he will marry Rosette only if her heart is as golden and beautiful as her hair, setting up a central conflict where her true worth will be tested. The wicked nurses attempt to substitute her daughter, who lacks Rosette's golden hair and is demonstrably unkind, highlights the stark contrast between false appearance and genuine goodness. The imposter's rude behavior, demanding food and physically assaulting peacocks, immediately reveals her lack of the golden heart the king seeks. Rosette, on the other hand, demonstrates her inherent kindness and compassion through her interaction with Frisk and the fish, and most powerfully, when she intercedes for her betrayers. Her plea to forgive the nurse and her daughter, despite their malicious actions that endangered her life and her brother's, is the ultimate proof of her golden heart, surpassing mere physical beauty. This act of unconditional forgiveness deeply impresses the King of the Peacocks, solidifying her rightful place as his queen and demonstrating that true royalty resides in one's moral character, not just their lineage or looks. The story also delves into the danger of attempting to control fate and the unintended consequences of fear. The fairy's prophecy, though dire, is presented as a possibility rather than an absolute certainty. The king and queen's response to this prophecy is driven by fear, leading them to the extreme measure of confining their beloved daughter in a tower, hoping to prevent the foreseen misfortunes. Ironically, this very act of confinement and subsequent release sets in motion the chain of events that directly places her brothers in peril when they are imprisoned by the King of the Peacocks due to the false bride. Had Rosette not been isolated, the initial circumstances for the search for the King of the Peacocks, and thus the opportunity for betrayal, might not have arisen in the same way. This suggests that sometimes, attempts to avert a dreaded future can inadvertently lead one closer to it, or at least to the circumstances where the inherent goodness of the protagonists is then put to the ultimate test. Rosette's natural kindness and compassion ultimately negate the misfortunes foretold, showing that character can overcome perceived destiny. Furthermore, the narrative explores the destructive nature of greed and betrayal versus the loyalty and innocence of good characters. The wicked nurse's scheme is entirely motivated by her desire for 100 gold coins and the ambition to elevate her daughter to a royal position, showcasing the corrupting influence of material desire. Her cold-blooded attempt to drown Rosette highlights the extent of her depravity. In stark contrast, Rosette's loyalty is evident in her trust of her brothers and her dedication to the kingdom while they are away. Her little dog, Frisk, embodies unwavering loyalty, acting as a crucial guardian who wakes Rosette and aids in her survival. The loyalty of Rosette's brothers, who undertake an arduous journey to fulfill her wish and maintain faith in her character even when faced with the imposter, underscores the strength of familial bonds. The story ultimately affirms that while greed can cause temporary chaos and suffering, it cannot ultimately triumph over genuine goodness and pure intentions. The return of Rosette's treasures and the King of the Peacocks' compensation to her brothers also serve as a restoration of balance and justice, emphasizing that integrity is rewarded.